You didn't think I was skipping this one, did you? You didn't think I was skipping this one, did you? Did you? Anderson .Paak, guys, come on. Massive fan of the guy. I think he's easily up there with the very best of our time. One of the most entertaining, charismatic, exciting singers and rappers of our time. Just a really, really versatile, super likable artist. Just everything he puts has a sprinkle of gold in there, even when he's not necessarily at his best, because I don't think all of his work has been amazing or anything like that, don't get me wrong, but even when it's been slightly below his usual standard, it's never been bad, and there's always at least a few great, fantastic moments on any given album that he puts out. Hey look, you might be somebody that thinks Oxnard or Venice are super underrated albums, and if you do, all the power to you. I don't really want to ever get into the territory of just absolutely glazing everything an artist puts out, even if I absolutely am finding that word to get ridiculously annoying and overused. But I do always find that, you know, even the best artists have their slumps, but Anderson .Paak doesn't really slump ever too low. And yeah, I think if we were having a conversation of like the best artists of maybe the past 15 years or something like that ish, I think he'd have to be in the top 10, you know. I think Anderson .Paak has been incredible, whether it's with his solo work or with his collaboration. I don't know what word I was about to say there. Collaboration albums with Knxlwedge as well, under the name NxWorries, which he initially dropped back in 2016, where he already had the Malibu album, which was the album that put him on the map, the album that maybe never topped in his career because it is just that high quality, and to have two of those in 1 year was remarkable. Finally, after many years of waiting for many fans, we get the second one, Why Lord. The first one, Yes Lord. Now we've got Why Lord. And I think they've topped the first one. I really do. I do think that they have improved on the first one. I did think the first one was very good. But even as good as that album is, I always felt like it never quite reached greatness. And then it never quite reached Malibu levels of just, you know, hit after hit, you know, constant banger after banger, where it's just like, oh man, each track is hitting. Some of the tracks felt a little scant, some of the tracks didn't feel quite as strong, and now this time around I think they've just really nailed what they were setting out to achieve with this one. I think they've just absolutely fantastically come together and just nailed it. You've got the opener, which has the Dave Chappelle little skit thing talking about, I don't know, people who are less fortunate than you, people have maybe more fortune than you. I don't really know why necessarily we need this. I guess it's probably one of those bucket list moments perhaps for these artists to have somebody like Dave Chappelle on their album, because once upon a time Dave Chappelle was funny. he was a funny guy. You might have seen some of his more recent stuff like Sticks and Stones and thought, this guy, he isn't that funny. But if you go back to the 90s, the guy was funny. Okay, he's a legend in the comedy game. Let's not forget that. He just nowadays is on a pretty poor trajectory, isn't really dropping the same kind of jokes and really punching low nowadays. So hearing him here on this was just a little like, yeah, okay, whatever. But once you got past that, you do just get to absolute gold after gold after gold. 86 Centra just has the most casual beat, but Knxlwedge has such a great way of just turning these really simplistic sounding instrumentals into the most addictive and alluring, and just like reaches into your soul in a way that not many producers at the moment are really on par with. It's important to remember that this style of production, this particular really classic soulful sound, isn't really that commonplace in the modern day. Like, yeah, of course there are producers that do this. There are rappers who rap over soulful production. You know, Freddie Gibbs tends to pick that kind of stuff. You've still got Madlib out here doing it. Like, I'm not trying to say nobody is out there doing it, and if you look hard enough and you dig deep enough, you will find there are plenty that do this style of production. But I just think there's just this really gentle touch with Knxlwedge. Like, he doesn't go too overboard. He might even just decide that a simple guitar loop that loops over and over again is more than enough, and you don't need to add that much to it. And somehow it just works so well. Suave transitions with tracks like Move On, you know, the smooth as hell, no I can't do things like I used to, refrain that Paak comes through with. Like, it's the perfect match because you've got Paak who is just in his soulful bag. It's like every track he's singing in the same way he did on a song like Make It Better from the Ventura album. Like, he is just in that same element. His mindset is the same. So many of these songs as well are talking about rocky relationships, and when he's in that bag, he is just such a good singer and really effective, just completely like laying down the emotions and making everything just feel so classic. Like, at points you feel like you're listening to some really like legendary stuff from the 70s, a la Al Green or something, and they capture that perfectly as well, that whole vibe, that whole aesthetic perfectly on tracks like KeepHer as well. With the features on this album, you got Thundercat coming through singing so nicely on this track. I mean, it is quite funny when he just comes out with the bitch. that is a funny moment. And then Where I Go as well with the Her feature. Like, everything is just so nicely put together. It just works so well. Where I Go as well is one of the tracks I wanted to go back to and talk about the lyrics here, because, you know, you've got the gliding over the really lovely guitar loop, but then also you've got the singing and the lyrics as well from Anderson .Paak that feels so hurtful, kind of talking about like an incompatible relationship, I guess you could say, as well, you know, between two people, where it's like she's always wondering where I am, she thinks I'm terrible, and this kind of thing. I don't know if Paak is revealing anything explicit here. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can read between the lines with what he's saying. Maybe Paak isn't quite the most faithful to his lady that he would like to think he should be. Not entirely sure, but even still, it does really feel like he's just laying all his emotions into these songs. FromHere as well with October London. What a name that is, by the way. You got a friggin' month of the year and a city in the world and just put them together. Like, fucking, what's next? September Paris? Like, what the fuck is his name? But anyway, this guy, like, wow. Absolutely singing like the rent is due. Like, absolutely just belting out the vocals. He sounds freaking incredible on this song. I was just so taken aback. The guitar solo that comes on this as well. Oh my days. What an incredibly sounding song. Like, the production, the vocals. I mean, you almost forget Snoop Dogg pops up at the end because you're just so taken aback by how powerful everything else is. That's by the time Snoop Dogg comes in, you're just like, oh yeah, cool, he's here. Not that he's bad on the song, but I just think everything else just completely sweeps you off your feet up until that point. Like, you're just a bit like, oh shit, yeah, this guy, everyone knows this guy. Speaking of the production as well, Daydreaming, oh my god, Knxlwedge was putting his soul into this album, man. This track sounds like classic 80s stuff. I'm honestly just waiting for The Weeknd to pop up on this track. Could you imagine a remix with Abel's voice over this Dawn FM type production? Tell me right now that would not sound amazing, because you cannot lie to me. That would sound so good. And by the way, at this point, we probably should have had like some kind of crossover between those two, because as far as I'm aware, I don't think we've ever heard Anderson .Paak anywhere near a Weeknd track or vice versa. Have we? I feel like I might have missed something really obvious, but if not, that needs to happen. And I think this was the song where you could make it happen too. There's some really nice, brief moments of just Knxlwedge's production kind of playing out on this album. One of the more notable ones is Looking. I think this track sounds fantastic. This sounds so J Dilla inspired as well. This sounds so like it's made perfectly for Donuts, and you just slot it in there and you wouldn't really see that much of a massive difference. But I'm really liking that influence popping up here. It doesn't really pop up on many of the tracks where Paak is singing. It's just more of this instrumental moment where you notice it a bit more, but it's cool to see. You've got Out The Way, which is a track where Paak is really flexing his like elongated vocals, really lasting them as long as he can. Sounds really lovely, of course. He's a really good singer. There's not really much else you can say with that. But yeah, it's just more of the character that pops up that makes Paak so likable for me on this album. I mean, WalkOnBy, you know, this track here where you've got the track that's kind of discussing the pain and the emotions and everything like that, kind of hiding behind the shades, as he says. The tears are there, the pain is in the heart, that kind of thing. Again, just kind of pulling from that classic soul era, and the guy is just letting his emotions seep out of him. I mean, we always said Drake was the guy for this. But does anyone do it better than Paak? I don't know, man. I think he's kind of, he's got it all. He's got that base covered now. Drake, you're done. we can leave you behind now. Paak is here to take the baton and move forward. Earl Sweatshirt slots in so nicely onto this track. I mean, the production is just made for like a some rap song style verse from Earl Sweatshirt. It's not quite as muddy, it's not quite as lo-fi, but some of the core elements, some of the more kind of like, again, the guitar looping and that really great like production sound that makes everything sound so clean, obviously without the lo-fi reverb over the top of it. It just makes sense that Earl Sweatshirt slotted in here. Possibly the best song on the album. I think it's a great moment to see these two collide, well, these three collide in this way, and it just pays off so well. Sometimes you can have high hopes for a feature and maybe it lets you down, but not here at all. Like, the production sounds great, the singing is great, Earl comes through nicely. It's just a match that is made for the heavens. In terms of critiques, I wouldn't say there's too many major ones. It's just the lyrics popping up here and there on some of the tracks that are a little off-putting. He has it in him to drop some lines that, particularly about ladies, just are a little bit cringe to me personally. I'm just never really always fully on board with some of those lines that he pops out with. I think when he's on it, he's really on it, but every now and then, you know, you've got Fall Through where he compares the lady parts to sweet plum wine. It's just a bit like, really? Are we doing this? Okay. He has it in him though. He just have a good sense of humor. Maybe it's worth not taking it all too massively seriously, of course, but just every now and then on the album, there's just that one line that pops up for me that's just a bit like, meh. Just does slightly enough to cut through the atmosphere every so often for me, because I just think the production and the way everything sounds on this album is just so smooth and suave that those kinds of lines just, yeah, cut through the atmosphere, really. It's happened before with Anderson .Paak's music, of course. He has like a title on Malibu, which is an interlude, and he calls it like interlube. It's like, come on, Paak, like, this is Family Guy type humor. Come on, man. But that being said, overall, I think it's a great album. It took me a few listens to really appreciate and just really sit down and let myself soak into everything, because I do feel like you just have to let it all soak up and you just really start to appreciate some of the little qualities in the production. I mean, I probably haven't even done some of Knxlwedge's production justice at times here, because it just does sound so crisp and so wonderful all the way through. And yeah, Paak singing, fantastic. The heart is there, the emotions are being poured out here. It doesn't sound like he's in the best place making this. I do think, if I'm right in thinking, did he recently go through a breakup with his wife? Did they divorce? Something happened there, I'm sure. Don't know when that was though. I don't know exactly when that was, but I think that is really coming through on the lyrics a lot throughout this album. Yeah, he's put his soul and heart and everything into it. I think it sounds great. It's an 8 out of 10 from me, easily one of the best of the year, and I'm just so glad that it is something that hasn't let me down. It's one of those big moments where you're like, oh, expectations could be so high to the point where you've just lost your head with it a bit and you just thought it was going to be this amazing thing. But similar to Brat from Charlie this year, expectations were high, they were met, and yes, it's easily going down as one of the best of 2024. Will be on my year-end list for sure. And yeah, I think it's great. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Disagree? What's your favourite track? What's your favourite Anderson .Paak album overall as well so far? That would be good to see. Do subscribe. Check out my Patreon as well. Support me over on there. That would be wonderful. Like the video. Share it around. Comment. All that stuff that helps the algorithm. Keeps the channel busy and going and growing. Do have a good day. And goodbye.